We are on Canto 4, Chapter 22, verse number 30. Let me share my screen. Prthu Maharaj's meeting with the four kumaras. Indriye Vishaya Krishter Akshiptam Dayatam Manaha Chetanam Harate Buddhi Stambhastoyam Ivaridat. When one's mind and senses are attracted to sense objects for enjoyment, the mind becomes agitated. As a result of continually thinking of sense objects, one's real consciousness almost becomes lost. Like the water in a lake that is gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its bank. So, when we meditate on the objects of sense gratification, that's a whole sequence. Dhyato Vishyan Pumsam Sangastesu. Then we develop attachment. Sangastesu Pajayate. Sangat Sanjayate Kama, which gives rise to lust. Kama Krodho Vijayate. And then Krodha Bhavati Sammoha. Sammohat Smriti Vibhrama. Smriti Bhramshad Buddhi Nasho. Buddhi Nashat Pranashiti. So this is a whole sequence Krishna describes in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So same thing is here mentioned, that as we become more attached to the sense gratification and to the bodily conception of life, then we forget who we are. Our real consciousness that I am spirit soul, I am part and parcel of Krishna, I am servant of Krishna, I am not this body, becomes lost. Just as there may be water in a lake, and on the bank of the lake there are some grass straws. So what happens? They suck up the water and the lake dries up. So similarly, our consciousness, our Krishna consciousness becomes dried up by all the desires for sense gratification. Labh, puja, pratishtha, kama, all these different desires, gross and subtle desires for sense gratification. It basically dries up our heart, or means consciousness is still there, but it becomes material consciousness. From spiritual consciousness, it becomes material consciousness. Okay, so that is what this verse is saying. In this verse, it is very nicely explained how our original Krishna consciousness becomes polluted, and we gradually become almost completely forgetful of our relationship with the Supreme Lord. So, our original consciousness is Krishna consciousness in the pure state. But when we come to this material world, in contact with the modes of passion, that love for God or Krishna consciousness gets lost. And we forget completely our relationship with the Supreme Lord. And we are like, in amnesia, we have loss of memory. We don't know who we are. And we start loitering in this material world. In the previous verse, it is recommended that we should always keep in touch with the devotional service of the Lord, so that the blazing fire of devotional service can gradually burn into ashes material desires, and we can become liberated from the repetition of birth and death. So, hearing about the Lord revives that consciousness back, what we have forgotten. And when loving devotion to the Supreme Lord manifests in the heart, then all the material desires become lesser and lesser. They are eradicated from the heart. The fire will burn away all the impurities. This is also how we can indirectly keep our staunch faith in the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead. when the mind is allowed to think of sense gratification continuously. That means we can control the mind, but when we allow the mind is thinking and we say, okay, keep on, go on thinking. Instead of checking the mind is allowed. When the mind is allowed to think of sense gratification continuously, it becomes the cause of our material bondage. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? He says that mind is the cause of bondage and mind is the cause of liberation. So we should elevate ourselves by the mind and not degrade ourselves by the mind. Because it is this mind, we are trapped in the subtle body, the soul is trapped in the subtle body. And according to the condition of the subtle body, the soul transmigrates to a different body, into another prison cell. So when the mind is allowed to think of sense gratification continuously, means we can we can control the mind. We can say, okay, I don't want. I can share the screen again if that's not. Let's see if that's going to make a difference. Maybe now it may be. When the mind is allowed to think of sense gratification continuously, it becomes the cause of our material bondage. If our mind is simply filled with sense gratification, even though we want Krishna consciousness, by continuous practice, we cannot forget the subject matter of sense gratification. So, the mind has to be weaned away, like entrained, so that it can think of Krishna. Otherwise, we want Krishna consciousness, but the mind is thinking of sense gratification. So, if our mind is simply filled with sense gratification, even though we want Krishna consciousness, by continuous practice, we cannot forget the subject matter of sense gratification. If one takes up the sannyas order of life but is not able to control the mind, he will think of objects of sense gratification, namely family, society, expensive house, etc. Even though he goes to the Himalayas or the forest, his mind will continue thinking of the objects of sense gratification. In this way, gradually one's intelligence will be affected. When intelligence is affected, one loses his original taste for Krishna consciousness. That is what Buddhi Brahmsha, Smriti Vibrama Buddhi Nasha, what is that?
Pramshad Buddhi Nasha Pranishit.
Buddhi Nasha Pranishit. The example given here is very appropriate. If a big lake is covered all around by long kusha grass, just like columns, the waters dry up. Similarly, when the big columns of material desire increase, and these material desires can assume titanic proportions, right? So it can become so big, all these desires, when the columns of material desire increase, then what happens? The clear water of consciousness is dried up. Therefore, these columns of kusha grass should be cut or thrown away from the very beginning, so that they will not suck up the water in the lake. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed that from the very beginning, we do not care of unwanted grass in the paddy fields. The fertilizing agents or water will be used by them and the paddy plants will dry up. So the weeds will take away all the nutrition. If you don't remove the weeds, then the weeds will take away all the nutrition from the main plant. And the plant will not get any nutrition and it will dry up. The material desire for sense enjoyment is the cause of our fall down in this material world, and thus we suffer the threefold miseries and continuous birth, death, old age, and disease. So you want sense enjoyment and material, all these material desires, it will give you a material body, and then we are not supposed to have taken on a material body. But because of our desires to enjoy separately from Krishna, Krishna has given us this. And every body is a source of trouble. So you get death, old age, and disease, and then again you are packed up in the womb of another mother. So like that, we are constantly suffering. So we are so dull because of the influence of Maya, the illusion that we cannot see the suffering of this. So, so that's why we don't want to find any solution. We think I'm all right. Somehow I'm trying to make adjustment in this material world, and sometimes it works. So I feel I'm very successful. But we have become so dull-headed that no amount of all this material adjustment can solve the problem of death. And even if I have big house, even if I have nice car, even if I have nice spouse, even if I have nice family, I still have to die. I still can get diseased, and I still have to become old. So all these things cannot solve any problem. But we are so fooled by Maya that we think, yes, I will arrange my situation in this material world. This temporary situation, I invest all my energy in making a very nice temporary situation, which can be taken away at any moment. It can change in a moment. So, so like that. But we are so foolish that instead of serving Krishna, we are investing all the time in struggling in this material world, trying to solve the problems. And the real problems are not solvable. Birth, death, old age, disease. Without Krishna consciousness, the real problems are not solvable. But Maya has made a fool out of us. And everybody is fool in this world, as Prabhupada would say. 99.9% of the people are foolish, are affected by the modes of passion and ignorance. And we see them and we also become foolish. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, don't listen to all this, what other people are saying. Listen to what great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada are speaking in his books, in his lectures, and all the devotees. So we can get out of this kind of situation. And lose our hope that there is any hope for any enjoyment, lose any hope for enjoyment in this world, and turn to Krishna. However, if we turn our desires towards the transcendent loving service of the Lord, our desires become purified. So we waste our time and so many things like that in all the material pursuits, and the problems are not going to be solved. So, but instead, if we turn our desires to the Lord's service and taking Lord's shelter, then there'll be solution. We cannot kill desires. We have to purify them of different designations. If we constantly think of being a member of a particular nation, society, or family, and continuously think about them, we become very strongly entangled in the conditional life of birth and death. So we identify ourselves as Indian or American or Russian, whatever, and then we become strongly bonded to this nation, society, family, and constantly we think about these things, then we can not escape. But if our desires are applied to the service of the Lord, they become purified. And thus we become immediately freed from material contamination. So we have to change our desires. So we should desire, or we should dovetail our desires to in the service of the Lord. Then we can become free from material contamination. Okay, so that is this verse. So mind becomes agitated by sense gratification. And
So yesterday we were talking about this fourth verse of Shikshashtakam, right? Na dhanam, na jannam, na sundaram kavitam. I don't want wealth. I don't want fame, followers, or association with the opposite gender. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, I just want to serve you birth after birth. So one of the Prabhujis that had come, he was telling that I don't have any of these desires, but I have a lot of pain in my body. And I just want Krishna to relieve me of that pain. So I was thinking that at the time of death, that would be our situation, right? Sense gratification we desires because we don't have, other major problems going on in our life. So we are thinking, oh, I can enjoy this way or that way. But at one point in our life, body will give us so much trouble, so much suffering, that we will say that, just Krishna, remove this suffering. I don't want anything from you. Just remove this suffering. And then when Krishna removes the suffering, that we get into a state where we are complacent, and then again we start to have these material desires
Mhm.
uh, of enjoyment.
Yeah.
So
If we have a healthy body, then we think, how can I enjoy this body? But as soon as you get a disease, then you forget all. Like if you get cancer, what are you going to enjoy? There is nothing to enjoy. You have to go to chemotherapy and all these things and all the side effects of all these things. So when the disease goes away, then we are again back in the mood of enjoyment. So this is how it is. So when we are healthy, then we should think, I should use my body and my senses to serve Krishna. And because now is the opportunity when I will have a lot of pain, at that time I don't know whether I can, you know, think of Krishna, serve Krishna. So right now my health is good. But when our health is good, we think now is the time to enjoy the senses. So that's how. And then when health becomes bad, then we think, oh, when I was healthy, I should have done this, I should have done that. But then it's too late.
yeah,
And sometimes the disease gets prolonged also. Like he was saying that, the old age gets prolonged and you get, it doesn't go away. The problems just persist. The disease keeps going on and on and on. So the time is now, right? We said the time is now.
and he was saying that, why is Krishna not hearing my prayer, that he is not removing my suffering? And Mahatma Das Prabhu says that, Krishna, he was thinking that, if Krishna removes our suffering, then we will forget him, and Krishna wants us to remember him, so we come back to him. He knows our nature. So if we show Krishna that, yeah, I will remember you in all situations, and I mean, there would not be any suffering. Suffering comes in our life so that we turn back to Krishna. But if we are already turning to Krishna, then there is no suffering, and means that mind is already absorbed in Krishna. Even if something happens to our body, we will be able to think of Krishna.
It requires very strong love for Krishna because, yeah, it's when you get pain and things like that, it's very difficult. But if you have practiced nicely and then you have strong attachment to Krishna, then you can
Yeah,
remember.
so we were discussing yesterday that Krishna sent suffering in the lives of devotees to purify them from the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit. So if we ourselves don't purify those material desires, then Krishna has to intervene and create a situation where we would become frustrated and give up those remaining material desires. So better is that we give it up ourselves rather than Krishna creating a situation, a difficult one.
Yeah, it's like we have to learn our lesson, and so, and even if we are devotees, there is no guarantee that there will be no suffering, right? Even
Right. We
there
said
is.
Prabhupada also went through so much. But his state of mind was different while going through the suffering. So because he had practiced it throughout his life, remembering Krishna, so he could be in that transcendental state even in that most difficult time of suffering in his body.
Yeah, sometimes yes, we should think like, if we have only few months left in our life, then what will we do? So why not think about like that now instead of waiting for that kind of situation to happen? So what will I do if I have only few months left in my life? Why not think of it now? Of course, now somebody may say, so how can I think like that? Because now I have my responsibilities and I have young children and I have to take care of this and I have to take care of that. If I, how can I think of something that is not true? Like that I have few months left in life. It's not true. I may live for so many decades. So, but to make spiritual advancement, okay, the situation has not happened, but internally the consciousness should be like, okay, what? what will it be? What will I do if I have? And if you practice in that way, that I have only 6 months left, 1 year left, then at that time you will make rapid spiritual advancement. So, so we have to kind of simulate a situation, and mind can, in our mind we can simulate, right? Like for example, if you want to give a entrance exam, then you simulate an environment, or like you take mock exam. So you simulate a situation where it's an exam and you sit down, you close your room, everything, and then you take your exam for 2 3 hours and see how you do. So in that way you get very, very well prepared for what is coming up. So many students take like mock exams to evaluate their performance and like that, because that exam is coming. So death is like an exam, it's coming. When it'll come, we don't know. It often comes as a surprise test. But right now, we should think that time is less. Yesterday, I think Mahatma Guru also said, yeah, we should think that time is less, right? Something they were discussing. That we have not become Krishna conscious yet, and the time is also very less. So Prabhupada also says, time and tide wait for no man. So one should accelerate one's devotional service, like that. So that means we have to accelerate, means internally we have to say, Krishna, please help me. We have to cry desperately to Krishna, like that. Okay, then things will change. Then there'll be feeling, and there'll be like, otherwise the same thing will go on, right? So okay, so we will, only one verse we did, so we'll stop here. Let's see. We'll hear about Narsinghadev. So then Narsingha Chaturdashi is coming up. Let me stop this and start again.